This is a production of Cornell University.
Please let me know if you have any difficulty in understanding me, because I have a really strong Brazilian accent, and not to help, I went to Australia, to get a better English. I probably should have gone to New Zealand, to get a better English, but I have this strong Brazilian Australian accent. So, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Al-Shofi for the invitation. For me, it's a great honor to be here today, giving this presentation. As Dr. Al-Shofi told you, I came here in 2015 as a visiting professor with Dr. Chris Watkins, and I actually loved Cornell, not just for the scientific interactions that I had, but also it was summer. And it was beautiful. I loved the campus. And then I was just wondering, how is this campus during the winter? And here I am, 9 years now later, here at the campus, and it's still beautiful. I love it. Okay. As Dr. Al-Shofi also mentioned, I was a professor in Brazil. I had never, ever worked with potatoes before. I was a post-harvest physiologist, worked with mangoes, bananas, pineapples, and I think the University of Idaho was crazy enough to hire me for this position. And then the title of my presentation is pretty much what I'm experiencing. So I'm still understanding potato post-harvest, and I'm bringing that to you. So today I will give you the glimpse of understanding potato post-harvest. Okay. And let's start with a question. So why potatoes are so special? First of all, because they are yummy and versatile. Many people like potato. And by the way, the Potatoes USA said that for the last 2 years, the Americans rated potato as the most preferred vegetables that they can have as a food choice. And the second one is broccoli. I think it's a really, easy race. If you compete with broccoli, I think everything is going to be good, But anyway, potato is now the leading, the most preferred food in the United States in vegetables. And potatoes are also really nutritious. If you think about potato, people just think about a carbohydrate as a source of energy. But potatoes also is a good source of protein and is a good source of potassium. And if you go to the gym, people eat a lot of bananas because bananas is rich in potassium. But potatoes are some varieties are richer in potassium than bananas. And the same as vitamin C. We have a lot of vitamin C in potatoes. And also there's a fight between the industry and the health people in terms of putting potato or not as a vegetable or is a healthy food. And one of the achievements of the Idaho Potato Commission was to be able to put potatoes as a good food for the Diabetic Society. Now we have this label, and then so potatoes are good. It's a good food, not just yummy, but a good food. Right. Potatoes are also economically important. So China is the largest producer of potatoes in the world, but China produces a lot because they have to feed 1.5 billion people. And India is the same. So the US is the 5th largest producer of potatoes in the world. And Idaho is the leading state. Idaho produces 35% of potatoes in the United States. Then we have a Washington state with 27%. Then we have Wisconsin and Oregon. So the tri-state, so Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, produces 67% of the potatoes in the United States. So it's a lot of potatoes that we produced in the tri-state area. But how about New York? Okay, here we go. The upstate New York produced roughly 200,000 tons of potatoes in 2022. That's an industry of approximately $50 million. Okay, it's an important industry for the state. Good. And Cornell plays a vital role for the potato industry in New York. Not just releasing new varieties. I just visited the lab with nematologist Dr. Wang. It was marvelous to see all the research that's being carried out. And Dr. John also doing a research with potatoes. I know him by name. I think I met him in some of PAA. I'm pretty good in faces, but I'm pretty bad in names. But I think I met him. But although potatoes are really important, not just nutritionally speaking, but economically speaking, take a look at the losses. So a FAO report that say that in the world, we're still losing 45% of all roots and tubers. If you take into consideration just North America and Oceania, like Australia and New Zealand, it represents 1 billion bags of potatoes. It's a lot. Is a lot. So it's good for us, as a potato post-harvest node. We still have a lot of room to improve and a lot of work to be done. The losses are mostly due to disease. So that's a picture of my colleague, Dr. Nora Olsen. She took that. She works a lot with pathology. I don't work with pathology. And then that would be another seminar, just to talk about the pathological problems of potatoes during storage. It's huge. I'm going to talk more the physiological aspects of potatoes in storage. Good. So that's a quick overview about potatoes. So now we're going to move to a post-harvest. And in Brazil, when I taught all these different crops like bananas, mangoes, I always start for the origin. Why? Because you need to understand from where that crop came from. And then you can understand all the horticulture practices that you can apply. I cannot grow mangoes in tropicals. Actually, I do. We grow apples in Brazil in the high altitude, but it's really difficult because it's not the climate. We can use a lot of chemicals, etc., but it's hard. So apples are from tropical, from temperate zones. And potatoes are also from the temperate zones from the Andes in the South America. So they develop in the high altitudes for the temperate zones in South America. There are a lot of different varieties, types, colors, shapes. So it's a huge diversity. But the Spanish, they took just a small portion of this variety, of diversity, and introduced in Europe, and from Europe to the UK, and from the UK to the United States and other parts of the world. But the most important thing of understanding the origin is to understand the climate. I don't know if you can see well this graph. That's a climatological information from Cusco in Peru. And then you have the months here in the x, and the precipitation is the black line, and the temperatures, the highest temperatures, the orange bars, and the lowest temperatures, the gray bars. And you have to take into consideration that the seasons in the South Hemisphere is the opposite from here. So right now it's winter here, and it's carnival in Brazil. What am I doing here? So it's summer and carnival. And actually, my brother is sending me pictures of, he is dancing in the carnival. He loves carnival. Anyway, so we have spring, when the crop starts to develop. Why it starts to develop in the spring? And when we plant potatoes also in the US, because we have an increase in precipitation and the minimum temperature starts to raise. Then potatoes are be able to grow. And then we have the summer, the crop will grow, develop the canopy, and we have the start of the reduction in precipitation and also the reduction in the day length. And they have the tuberization. And the plant will senesce during the autumn, less water, the temperatures will go down, the plant will senesce, and eventually, in the winter, the tubers will be in the ground, dormant. They cannot grow. Why? Because it's cold and there is no water. That is exactly where we harvest potatoes. They are dormant. So potatoes, we have to think that we are just animals that eat fruit and vegetables to disperse, the seeds. Potatoes were not meant to be eaten. Potatoes were meant to reproduce the plant. Okay, good. And then I like this a classical chart about development and the horticultural maturity. So that was published by Watara and his co-authors in 1984. It's a classical information. If you look at the tubers and roots, you can see that they have to be harvested at the physiological maturity state. I'm going to explain that, okay? So many crops, for example, if you go to Brussels sprouts, you're going to harvest them at the maturity stage. They are all immature in the growth, but potatoes not. They're physiological mature. And this is how the potatoes develop. We plant the seed potatoes, then we meet the stem. This stem will grow, forming the canopy of the plant. And some stems will develop in the ground, the stolons. And these stolons, they will accumulate a lot of starch, forming the tubers. So basically, potatoes, when we eat potatoes, we are eating a stem or a branch of a tree that accumulates the starch. So this is a branch of a tree. We have the bud, apical bud. We have the leaves and scars with the buds. We have many eyes with the buds. We have the lenticels. We have multiple lenticels in the potatoes. The only difference is that branch developed in the ground. Okay. Then is a picture just to show all the parts of potatoes. So we have the very same parts of a branch. And then maturity. I told you that potatoes will develop, and then when start to reach the autumn, the plants will senesce, and the tubers will be ready to be harvested. Do you think it's easy to determine the maturity of potatoes? It's really hard because you can't see. When you see an apple turning from green to red, it's pretty easy. A mango from green to yellow is pretty easy. You can look at that and say, okay, it's turning, it's getting mature, I can harvest that. How about potatoes? Oh, Gustavo, they senesce. Not all varieties. Some varieties, they are really vigorous. They still have really green canopy. So some people are developing like drones and try to have satellite images and imagery and try to get maturity determination. It's really complicated because it depends on not just variety, but you have a lot of nitrogen. What's going to happen with the canopy? It will be green, but the tubers are already mature. Okay, then you have a lot of maturity indexes. Some of them are related to the quality for the industry, especially specific gravity. That's related to the content of dry matter in the tuber. And the desirable tuber size. For example, if you are growing a specialty potatoes, you, as a grower, you want a small tuber. You don't want a big tuber for specialty potatoes. But on the other hand, for the industry, you have potatoes this big. So, and yield is really important. And the senescence of the canopy in some varieties and in some conditions, and the thickening of the skin, that is called skin set. So, just to illustrate how that develops in the field, so we have the days after planting, specific gravity, and reducing sugars. So take a look at how the gravity increases over time. When it reaches the desired number, that's 1.08, you can get the one indication of the maturity. The same with sugars. The industry doesn't like potatoes with a high content of sugars, because when we put in the fryer, we have a Maillard reaction, will turn dark. Okay, so all these numbers together, we can establish the physiological maturity as expected We have differences in varieties, the differences in the maximum yield, the maximum specific gravity, the minimum sucrose, or the minimum sugar content. If you get all these numbers and you add and divide it by 4, that's the physiological maturity, this magical number. But in general, this is the best indicator of a maturity, is the accumulation of degree days above 4 Celsius or 39 Fahrenheit. So that's the accumulation that during the season, that's the better predictor of a physiological maturity. And why physiological maturity is important? Because as any other crop, potatoes are really susceptible to the varieties of, or the differences in the environment, in temperature, especially temperatures. And in higher temperatures, the tuber will be physiologically mature or older. I have one student in Brazil, and she's doing her PhD, and one of her experiments, she went to the grower 4 hours away. She spent the whole day digging, getting potatoes. When she arrived at the lab, the tubers were already sprouting. Why? We are in Brazil. We don't have cold weather. So when potatoes are exposed to higher temperatures during the growth period, they're going to get older. And why is that important? Because older potatoes, or physiologically older potatoes, do have a shortened shelf life. Okay. And I love this trial. It was a study published by Zomic and co-authors in 2014, just to illustrate how temperature can influence the physiology of the tuber in the field. The author put a lot of a resistant in the hill to increase the temperature at different periods of the tuber development, especially during bulking or at the end of tuber bulking, and increase the temperatures over here to 29 C in relation to the environment that was 16 degrees Celsius. So what's happening? Take a look at what's happening. 29 C at maturation for Ranger russet. Take a look at the sprout compared to the ambient. Just to illustrate that what my student faced in Brazil. If you have higher temperature in the bulk, that's what you're gonna have. Older potatoes and short shelf life. Good. Another indicator, that's a skin set. So skin set is really important. And it usually develops well after 3 weeks, after 3 weeks of vine kill. So the growers, they have the crop, and then they spray the crop with a herbicide or other product to kill the vine. So the vine kill. And then after 3 weeks, they can harvest. The peel will be well developed. But how about in Canada? 3 weeks in Canada is too much. In Canada, they don't have the luxury of waiting 3 weeks. Sometimes they harvest potatoes that's a green potatoes. They still have the vine green because the season is too short. They cannot wait 3 weeks. 3 weeks, they will be frozen in the ground. And then it's a big problem, especially because immature tubes of poor skin set will lead to more disease, more dehydration, and more defects. Good. So this part, I covered the physiology. Now I'm going to go to the funny part. That's a harvest and put in the storage. So harvest potatoes are not easy thing. My student, she needed to dug all the potatoes for her trial. And there always is a balance. I just showed you. So this balance of maturity that we need to go in adequate gravity, a low respiration rate when they are mature, an adequate skin set, low weight loss, and the opposite when they are immature. And how to harvest potatoes? I'm not going to cover every single one, But it's just to show you that you have multiple steps that can lead to mechanical injury. Why? Because potatoes in many parts of the world, the commercial production, are harvested using mechanical harvesters. And to illustrate that, I brought this video. I hope it works. Yeah. From a big farm in Idaho, this is a water farm from Japanese descendant family. Take a look at the size of the farms in Idaho. We have a digger or more than 8 rows taking potatoes out of the ground. Take a look at these and the possibilities of mechanical injuries in there. Sorry for the sound, but I could not take this out. And we have the harvester that collects the tubers from the ground, put in the truck. So the pivots. Again, take a look. Have to go all around and fold into the truck. And then this truck will take the potatoes to the cellar. We used to call cellar because in the past we used to store potatoes actually in the cellar of the house. Take a look the size of the farm. Here we go. So we have the potato load in the truck. We cover the potatoes with a sheet that's really good to avoid the heat load from the sunshine. And it goes to the piler. We have some people here sorting the potatoes and also taking the dust out, and they go into the storage. Just to show the many steps that we have. And they can fill one of these big cellars in one day. Take a look at the amount of potatoes. We have the ventilation system here. So this is amazing. It's amazing how they can manage all the farm, the logistics is involved, and then it's not surprised that we have a lot of mechanical damage. So Knowles and co-authors published that the 70% happens during the harvest. It's a lot. 14% at the truck, the pile of 14%, and here, very low, 2%. But all this mechanical damage will result in death, really poor quality. And the poor quality is not just related to the bruising itself, but also the skinning. That's all openings that can lead to more weight loss and the entry of a pathogen. And have a shadow bruise and mechanical damage like an internal black spot. And all this blackening is due to an enzyme called polyphenol oxidase. We also have, when you have a scratch, it doesn't turn black. It's the same enzyme. It's doing the same job, oxidizing the monophenols in diphenols, but they're still colorless. They don't have color. And the diphenols in orthoquinones that are a little bit yellowish color, but they are really reactive compounds. Why they are reactive compounds? Because the plant produces that to protect the plant against the pathogens. So this compound will react with the amino acids and proteins from the pathogens. Okay, but in that case, we react with the amino acids and protein, leading to dark polymers that the industry doesn't like. And the industry doesn't like to the point to develop a silenced PPO potato. That is a potato that was released by Simplot, one of the largest companies in the United States. So take a look at the difference between one potato without the PPO, with PPO5 and without PPO5, the quality. So there is no brown. They also developed that the silenced asparagine synthetase A1 gene, there is no acrylamide for a synthesis. So it is a toxic compound. The only thing that I don't like in that is as a post-harvest physiologist, we never can forget all the via process that the potato passed from the field to go to the storage. The multiple steps of mechanical damage. So it's not because it's not showing the browning that they are not suffering mechanical damages. Because this mechanical damage can also affect other quality aspects of potatoes. Okay. Now into storage. So there are multiple steps in the storage. I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm going to jump directly to the curing, because I showed you one picture of the potato with a lot of skinning problem that's due to abrasion when they are moving from the ground to the cellar. And this curing is really important, especially to produce a new layer of a periderm and protect the potatoes from disease and desiccation. Okay. And I'm going to follow all these recommendations from a notes from Washington State University about curing. So what is curing? Curing is not exclusive for potatoes. So onions and garlic, we have the curing process in the post-harvest. You need to dry out this crop and develop a new skin to protect against pathogens. Okay. So what is wound healing? So we have the sound peel of potato. We have the suberized layer, a subepidermal cells, and cortical cells. When it's damaged, potatoes do have a really nice capacity of producing new periderm, a layer of cells due to the deposition of suberin. If you cut potatoes and let in your table, in 4 days you'll have a new skin on top. So many other crops do have that. Sweet potatoes, for example, they also have curing. And it's a 3-step process. We have the initial one that takes place in 0 to 36 hours. We have the suberization that takes a little bit longer, and also the wound periderm formation. In terms of the initial response, is really interesting. So we have the damaged cells, and the damaged cells will produce what we call damage-associated molecular patterns, especially a oxygen-reactive species and the release of calcium. So the reactive oxygen species and calcium will be responsible for sealing off the plasmodesmata, not leaving the pathogens to getting the adjacent cell. So protecting that sound cell. And also the calcium will move through the other cells and initiating the cascade of phosphorylation that will lead to the transcription of defense genes to protect the sound cells. But it's not that complicated. I love this paper. What's really important is to understand the role of the reactive oxygen species, especially the oxidase, this NADPH oxidase that has a peak in 24 hours. What this enzyme does, this enzyme produces superoxide. Superoxide, you have a superoxide dismutase that will convert this superoxide into hydrogen peroxidase. And hydrogen peroxidase is a substrate of peroxidase that will oxidize the phenolic compounds into a suberin. It's not that complicated, come on. And leading to the suberization. And suberization is a process of forming that new layer of suberin in the damaged cells, okay? And if you look at the time, you can see that it's extremely dependent on temperature. What's the rule of thumb in post-harvest? Cool as soon as you can. Not with potatoes. Because if you cool potatoes really quickly, we're going to affect the wound healing, and it's going to take longer. Take a look. So we need to keep potatoes a little bit warm for this process to take place. And another enzyme that's really important in that part is the phenylalanine ammonylase, or as in United States, phenylalanine ammonylase. So this enzyme is responsible for converting the amino acid phenylalanine into tranexamic acid. Okay, and then the accumulation of a tranexamic acid with an oxidase activity producing superoxide, a hydrogen peroxide, and the wall-associated peroxidase forming the suberin that will lead to the accumulation of suberin in the new pair there. Okay. And finally, is the differentiation of the new cells that also is dependent on temperature. So it's always a trade-off between the temperature and the physiological process that you want. If it's the highest the temperature, the faster is going to be the curing. But at higher temperature, what you're going to have? A higher probability of disease development and weight loss. If we cool that down, we're going to slow the curing process, control the decay development, and reduce the weight loss, but with a cost in the process. Okay, just to show how the new wound burden will form using a different dyes. You can see that a microscopically. Okay, let's go to cooling. In the Pacific Northwest, we use the evaporative cooling in the majority of the storage. We don't, very few potato storage do have mechanical refrigeration system. Some do have, especially when they harvest potatoes in August, they're still really warm, have a huge heat load. Imagine one of those storage full of potatoes at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a huge heat load inside that building. So the evaporative cooling doesn't have the capacity of remove all that heat. So they have a supplementary mechanical unit, or you can actually lease a mechanical refrigeration system and put in your system to try to cool potatoes down. Okay. The most important part of the evaporative cooling is this: relative humidity. Potatoes always must be stored at 97% relative humidity. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of weight. And weight is money. Water is money. Potato is 80% water. If you lose water, you lose money. Okay? And ventilation is the way that is used in the industry. They talk a lot about ventilation. Oh, ventilation is really important. But ventilation, in my perspective, is just a way to cool down the crop. We cannot use hydrocooling. If I could use hydrocooling, I would talk about the water. I'm not talking about water, I'm talking about air. Air movement is ventilation. And the two main systems we have the pipes that are put in the bottom of the cellar, and you have also the concrete with perforations that I'll go down. Yep. So we have this structures here. We have the plenum. The air is blown from my side to the end, and getting in these holes, and they leave from here to the top of the crop. And the thing is, we have 18 feet of potatoes for this air to move. So we have the capacity of the evaporative cooling is huge to be able to have enough air to move through this crop and remove the moisture and also the temperature. Okay. So whenever the curing period is over, we need to cool that crop really quickly to the holding temperature. So it's usually done by reducing the temperature 0.40, 25, 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit per week. So it takes longer. If you imagine that we're going to move from 50 to 55 to 42, it takes almost 1 month to reach that temperature. It's a huge, it's a long period that potatoes will be exposed to higher temperature and the possibility of losing a lot of weight. Then the ventilation takes place here. That's really important because if you have a higher ventilation rate, we can cool that crop really quickly. But the most important part again is to keep that high moisture, high relative humidity. Because take a look at it's not the speed of the air that will lead to the weight loss. It's actually the relative humidity in that air that will drive the weight loss. So at 99%, take a look, potato actually get weight. At 97, that's the recommended. You're not going to lose weight, even though we have a huge airflow here. And 90, take a look. So that's the relative humidity that drives the weight loss, and not just the ventilation itself. Okay, let's go to holding. Holding is the temperature that we keep potatoes for 8 to 12 months. And potatoes are not different from the other crops. So the higher the temperature, the shorter is going to be the shelf life. Or we can say, the lower the temperature, the longer is going to be the shelf life of potatoes. Okay? That's an exponential relationship, as many other crops. But potatoes always have. It's a complicated problem. There's a problem. That's cold sweetening. So what's cold sweetening? Who likes barbecue? I'm from Brazil. I love barbecue, and I love beer. So what I do, I get my cooler. I put the ice, water, and salt. Why I put the salt? To reduce the freezing point. So it's going to be below 0, and it keeps my beer cooler. Potatoes do the same. We have the cell. If I put the cell in the lower temperature, as an adaptation, potatoes will hydrolyze the starch, producing glucose and fructose, increasing the osmolarity of the cell, protecting the cell from freezing or cooling. It's an adaptation. Do you remember one of the first slides that I showed you origin? The tube was on the ground, in the ground during the winter. That's an adaptation to survive the winter, to be able to germinate during the spring. But it's pretty bad for the industry. Why? Because this reducing sugars, when we fry potatoes again, when they at higher temperature have Maillard reaction. So the reducing sugars will react with amino acids, producing melanoid genes that are dark pigments, and also can produce acrylamide. That's a toxic compound. So that's why the temperatures for the holding period varies according to the end use. For example, for table potatoes or fresh potatoes that we eat now, we buy in the supermarket to make smashed potatoes I'm going to cook. We don't have this problem. We can put potatoes at below 45. Actually, some growers put at 39, 40 Fahrenheit. And for frying, we should keep these potatoes at higher temperature because we need to avoid that cooling, the cooling sweetening. And for chips, it's even worse. So depending on the end use, you have different temperatures. So why? Because consumers don't like dark French fries. I don't care. I know I can eat dark French fries, but McDonald's, for example, wants just USDA's number zeros. That's really pale potato. So the whiter, the better. Okay, just to simplify here, some trials at the University of Idaho, a Tina Brandt She works for Simplot, but she did this. She worked for the University of Idaho for many years. And then we have here two different varieties: Russet Burbank, that is standard for the industry, and Clearwater Russet now is also approved by McDonald's, just to show how they react during the storage. So we used mostly three temperatures: 42, 45, 48. And take a look, that's the limit of sugars, 0.1% glucose. Take a look at Burbank at 42 during the holding period, all above the threshold. Just at 48 was pretty much at the limit, but take a look at Clearwater. So that's why the industry is moving. So they're called cold-resistant varieties. So they don't have this increase in sugars during the storage. And in terms of reflectance, that's the color of the fry. So we use the USDA chart. That's considered USDA 0s, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Take a look at the Clearwaters. All the chips, all the fries were above 1. And take a look at the Russet Burbanks. So that's to show that the quality can change according to the varieties, and also the temperature that we use to store potatoes. So that's really good when you have a breeding program and post-harvest program working together, because we need to determine the end use of that variety. That can be really good in terms of yield, but cannot store well at 42. Should be stored at 48 to keep the sugars below the threshold and the color as a good color. There are some remedies, but they're not 100% efficient. One is reconditioning. What is reconditioning? It's to take potatoes from that cold environment and increase the temperature. It's like this one. So have potatoes stored at 4 Celsius, that's 39 Fahrenheit, and then transfer to 16 Celsius. Take a look that this one, Gemstar Russet, is cold resistant. So it doesn't matter the temperature. Take a look at the color. Zeros. It's a really good variety to store at low temperature. Take a look at Defender. It was USDA number 3, and then when it increased the temperature, it went down to 2. But I like to explain why. What is behind this? That's the respiration. The respiration wasn't here. When we put that 16, take a look what happened with the respiration. This peak. Respiration is a process that consumes sugar. And by consuming sugars, you can improve the quality, but not a little bit. So the best way to do with this is to get cold-resistant varieties. Good. And also have biotechnology. As I showed at PPO, the industry also is moving to have a RNA interference, potatoes, especially blocking the action of invertase. With that, we don't have this problem. So because with the invertase, the sucrose cannot be converted into glucose and fructose, and don't have reducing sugars, and then the industry is doing that. So I was talking with Dr. Al-Shofi, maybe in 20 years, we're not going to have any problem in post-harvest, because all these transformations, they're going to solve all the problems that we face. And one of the other problems that we face is sprouting. As I showed you, you have the dormant period, and the dormant period now is related to the dormancy that the potatoes present. So the dormancy is related to the accumulation of a hormone such as abscisic acid that prevent the growth of the buds. Whenever this abscisic acid is metabolized, is oxidized, then you have and many other metabolic process, we can have the sprout. Again, just to show that's the adaptation for that period. And it's really dependent on variety and temperature. Take a look at the standard Russet Burbank at 42 as a period of dormancy period of how many minutes? Sorry? Okay. 175 days at 48, 130. How can we store potatoes at 240 to almost a year? So we need to apply chemicals to control that. We can apply in pre-harvest as maleic hydrazine or in the post-harvest. In the United States, we use a lot of chlorprophane that is not allowed in Europe anymore. They use a lot of ethylene there. So, but no, chlorprophene is really effective. Take a look at these. The same varieties, 45, 48, with CIPC, without CIPC. Take a look how effective is this product, okay? Now, again, biotechnology taking place. So controlling the starch breakdown, we don't have sucrose, and then you have potatoes without a sprout. And finally, marketing. So it's the same as apples. We have just one season in the year. In Brazil, we have a luxury to have 3 seasons of potatoes. Here in the United States, just one. And you have to put these potatoes in the storage and supply all the market. It's not an easy task to take potatoes out of the storage. We need to avoid new brews that the industry called, have the old brews from the harvest period, and have the new brews that's formed in this step of the post-harvest management, especially if potatoes are really cold. When they are really cold, if they hit something, they will shatter. Have to increase the temperature a little bit to be able to take potatoes out. And one of the main problems that causes a lot of rejections is the flattening of potatoes, especially when they take these potatoes out of the storage. In 4 to 5 days, we have this internal browning that the industry called a cutting black. For fresh market, that's what we are seeing in Idaho. A lot of robotization and artificial intelligence use. So this company is the same company, WADA. They have 7 robots, just 3 people working. So it reminds me that the book of Yuval Harari, Homo sapiens, and talk about artificial intelligence substituting us. So take home message. I don't have time. Just to show you, I hope you have understand a little bit about potato post-harvest. So we have all these things taking place when we put potatoes in storage. And I'd like to thank my team, University of Idaho. So my technician, Samuel Peitos, my 2 students from PhD from Brazil, Vanessa Pedrosa and Mike Isidoro, at the University of Idaho and the Potato Consortium and USDA for funding my research. I have to do my advertise. I'm hiring people, especially master's and PhD students, and saying that I'll open up for questions. Thank you so much. So the question was if a browning has some safety problems. Yeah.
So like with the if there isn't that gene that you're five,
Yeah. Yeah.
If there isn't, are there any food safety concerns with potatoes that like would otherwise be
No. Do you like coffee? Do you like tea? Do you like chocolate? All these products, they are dark because of PPO. So for us to have like a dark chocolate, we have chocolate. They have the cocoa nuts, the kernel, and we put them to ferment. And after that, we roast. That roasting process is exactly the PPO, all this conversion of a compound, a tea, for example. So many products that we eat, the browning actually is really good for us. So that part, so doesn't that have any a safety concern? The only thing that's a nutritional concern, because when PPO reacts with the amino acids, reduces the availability of proteins and amino acids for us. But it's not in the point that will reduce the protein content. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So,
This has been a production of Cornell University. on the web at cornell.edu.